Here's something that happens to almost everyone who starts investing. And honestly, almost nobody warns you about it. You open your account a year in, maybe 2 years in, and the number staring back at you is underwhelming. You've been contributing every single month, doing everything right, and the balance looks like it barely moved. So you start wondering if this whole compounding thing is a bit of a myth. Maybe it works for other people. Maybe you're doing something wrong. You're not doing anything wrong. You're just early. My name is Rick, and I've spent a stupid amount of time studying why people quit investing at exactly the wrong moment, which, funny enough, is almost always right before things start getting interesting. Not because they lost money, not because the market crashed. They quit because nothing seemed to be happening, and boring is a hard thing to stick with. Here's the thing though. Compounding isn't slow, it's patient, and there's a specific moment, a real identifiable point in the math, where it stops being patient and starts being aggressive, where the growth line stops looking like a gentle hill and starts looking like a wall. Most people never see it coming because they give up in the flat part right before it happens. So today I want to show you exactly what that flat part is doing behind the scenes, why it feels so slow even though it isn't, and what actually happens the moment things flip. Because once you see this, you'll never look at a boring year in your portfolio the same way again. Let's start with why compounding feels slow, because there's actually a really simple, almost embarrassing reason for it. Your brain is wired for addition, not multiplication. Think about your paycheck. It comes in, it's a fixed number, it adds to your bank account in a straight line. Your brain is completely comfortable with that. $10 plus $10 plus $10. You can feel that kind of growth intuitively, but compounding doesn't add, it multiplies, and human intuition is famously terrible at multiplication over time. There's a classic thought experiment finance people love. Fold a piece of paper in half 50 times. How thick is it? Most people guess a few inches, maybe a foot if they're feeling bold. The actual answer is thick enough to reach the sun, not close to the sun, past it. That's not a trick question. That's just what multiplication does when you give it enough turns. And your portfolio works the exact same way, just slower and quieter, which is honestly what makes it so easy to underestimate. Here's a realistic version of this. Say someone starts putting away $400 a month into a retirement account. After year one, they've contributed $4,800, and growth added maybe a couple $100 on top. It feels like nothing. After year three, they've put in over $14,000, and growth has added maybe $1,500. Still feels unimpressive relative to the effort. The contributions are clearly doing all the heavy lifting. Growth is just along for the ride. And if you judged compounding by those first 3 years, you'd conclude it basically doesn't work, which is exactly the trap. Because compounding isn't underperforming in those years. It's loading. The base has to get large enough before the multiplication has anything meaningful to multiply. Here's a mistake I see constantly. People compare their portfolio's dollar growth to their own contributions, month after month, and use that ratio to judge whether investing is working. Early on, contributions will always win that comparison. Always. That's not a signal to stop. That's just what year 1 through 4 of a long game looks like. So if the early years are just loading, when does it actually flip? This is what I'd call the crossover point, and it's more concrete than people expect. The crossover point is the moment your portfolio's investment growth in a given year becomes larger than the amount you personally contributed that year. Not your total balance, the annual growth versus the annual contribution. That's the real marker because that's when the machine you built starts outworking you. Let's put real numbers on it. Same person, $400 a month, $2,800 a year, $4,800 a year, into an account earning something like 7% annually, which is a reasonable long-run assumption for a diversified stock portfolio. In year 1, contributions are $4,800, growth is a few $100s, no contest, but roll the clock forward. By somewhere around year 11 or 12, the balance has grown enough that 7% of it actually exceeds $4,800 for the first time. That's the crossover. That's the year the portfolio quietly starts pulling more weight than the person does. And here's the part that catches people off guard. After crossover, the gap doesn't stay small. It widens, and it keeps widening, Because growth compounds on a growing base, while contributions typically stay flat or only grow with modest raises. By year 20, growth in a single year might be double what's being contributed. By year 25, it might be 5 or 6 times as much. The portfolio has essentially hired itself an extra income stream that never takes a day off, never asks for a raise, and works while you sleep. This is also why financial advisors get almost annoyingly repetitive about starting early. It's not a moral lecture about discipline, it's math. Someone who starts 10 years earlier doesn't just get 10 extra years of contributions. They get 10 extra years positioned before the crossover point, which pulls their entire crossover forward and makes the eventual acceleration dramatically larger by the time they retire. There's also a detail here that surprises people once they sit with it. The crossover point doesn't require a bigger contribution to arrive sooner. It mostly requires time and a reasonable rate of return applied consistently. Bump the monthly contribution up and you'll get there a little faster, sure, but the bigger lever, by far, is simply not interrupting the process. Every pause, cashing out during a market dip, skipping contributions during a lean month, stopping entirely for a year while you figure things out, doesn't just cost you that pause. It pushes your crossover point further out because the base has less uninterrupted time to build on itself. Let me make this less abstract with an actual comparison because I think numbers only land when you can picture two real people. Person A starts investing at 25, puts in $300 a month consistently for 40 years until they're 65. Total contributed over that time, $144,000. Person B waits. Life happens, whatever the reason, and they don't start until 35. To catch up, they contribute more aggressively, $450 a month for 30 years. Total contributed, $162,000. Notice that already, person B put in more of their own money. Assume both earn that same reasonable 7% average. Person A, despite contributing less overall, ends up with a portfolio worth roughly $700,000 more than person B at age 65. Not slightly more. Hundreds of thousands more from someone who put in less cash out of pocket. Why? Because person A's early contributions had 10 extra years, sitting on the other side of their own crossover point, compounding through the exact stretch where growth starts dwarfing contributions. Person B's money never gets those 10 years back. No amount of catch-up contributions can manufacture time that's already passed. You can replace missed dollars. You genuinely cannot replace missed years. I want to be careful here because I know some of you watching started later, and I don't want this to feel like a door slamming shut. It's not. Person B still ends up wealthy, still retires comfortably. The point isn't you're doomed if you didn't start at 25. The point is that the flat, boring, unimpressive-looking early years are actually the most valuable years in the entire process, precisely because they're the years furthest from the finish line, which gives them the most time to multiply. If you're in that flat stretch right now, you're not behind. You're planting. And there's a quieter lesson buried in person B's story too. The fact that they still ended up with a genuinely strong retirement despite starting a decade late isn't an accident. It's proof that the second best time to start is always right now, because every additional year you let the base sit is a year that base gets to multiply instead of just add. Person B didn't out-earn person A, but person B still built real wealth because they stopped waiting for a perfect moment and let time do what it does. Now, here's something people almost never talk about, and I think it's honestly the more useful insight. The slow years aren't just necessary. They're doing the real work, even though it doesn't look like it. Picture compounding as a snowball rolling down a long hill. At the top, the hill is barely sloped. You're pushing that snowball yourself, it picks up a little snow, and progress is genuinely slow. That's frustrating if you're staring at the snowball expecting it to already be huge. But here's what's actually happening at that stage. The snowball is establishing its shape. Its size at the bottom of the hill, the wild, fast, dramatic part everyone pictures when they think of compounding, is almost entirely determined by how much snow it picked up in that slow, unglamorous top section. cut the top section short, and you don't just lose that section's growth, you shrink the base that everything after it multiplies from. That's why quitting during the flat years is so much more costly than it appears in the moment. It's not just, I missed a few years of small growth. It's, I permanently shrank the size of the base that would have been compounding for every year after this one too. There's a specific psychological trap tied to this, and I'd bet a lot of people watching have felt it. It's checking your account balance too often. When growth is small in dollar terms, checking daily or weekly just shows you noise, market wiggles that dwarf the actual underlying progress. That noise feels discouraging, sometimes even feels like proof it's not working, but you're measuring the wrong thing at the wrong resolution. Nobody judges whether a tree is growing by staring at the trunk for 10 minutes. You look at photos a year apart. Same idea here. The signal only becomes visible over a long enough window. The other trap is comparing your early years to someone else's later years. Social media doesn't help here. You see someone posting a portfolio that's ballooned, and you don't see the 15 boring years of loading that happened before the camera showed up. You're comparing your Chapter 1 to somebody else's Chapter 20, and that comparison will always feel unfair. Because it is unfair. It's not the same chapter. Think about a retired school teacher who started contributing to a 403(b) at 26, put in a modest amount every paycheck for close to 4 decades, and never once thought of herself as an investor in any serious sense. For the first 12 or 13 years, her statements looked almost identical to her own contributions, plus a little. Unremarkable, by her own description. But somewhere in her late 30s, without any change in behavior on her end, the growth line started separating from the contribution line, slowly at first, then unmistakably. By the time she retired, the portfolio had grown to several multiples of everything she'd ever put in. Nothing dramatic happened in any single year. The drama, if you can call it that, was the accumulation of 13 quiet years nobody was watching. So practically, what do you actually do with all this? A few things, and none of them are complicated. First, if you're early in this process, stop judging your progress by comparing growth dollars to contribution dollars. That comparison will discourage you every single year until crossover, and crossover might be a decade out. Judge progress instead by whether you're consistently contributing and whether your investment mix is appropriate for your timeline. Consistency is the input you actually control. The output lags behind it on purpose. Second, know roughly where your own crossover point sits. You don't need a complicated model. A simple retirement calculator can show you, based on your contribution rate and a reasonable return assumption, roughly which year the math flips in your favor. For a lot of people starting from zero in their 20s or early 30s with disciplined contributions, that point tends to land somewhere in the 10 to 15-year range. Knowing that number matters because it turns an abstract someday into a concrete date you're working toward, which makes the boring years easier to sit through. Third, and this one's underrated, resist the urge to pull back contributions the moment growth starts looking exciting. I've seen people reach their crossover point, watch the account genuinely start compounding fast, and use that as an excuse to ease off their own contributions, thinking the portfolio's got it from here. It doesn't, not entirely. Contributions still matter after crossover. They just matter less than they did, because growth has taken over the heavier share of the lifting. Keep both engines running as long as you reasonably can. And fourth, if you're further along and you've already passed your crossover point, congratulations. Genuinely, fewer people reach it than you'd think, mostly because they stop before they get there. If that's you, this might be a good moment to revisit your asset allocation and think about protecting what you've built, since the portfolio is now doing enough work that preserving the base matters as much as growing it. One more thing worth mentioning, because I think it gets skipped in most versions of this conversation. Crossover isn't a finish line, and it definitely isn't permission to stop paying attention. Markets don't move in a straight line even after your growth outpaces your contributions. There will be years after crossover where the portfolio actually shrinks, sometimes by a lot, and that can feel far more unsettling than the slow years ever did, precisely because you've gotten used to watching it grow on its own. Understanding the math ahead of time doesn't make a down year comfortable. What it does is stop you from mistaking a down year for a broken plan. The mechanism that got you to crossover doesn't stop working during a rough stretch. It's still loading, still compounding underneath the surface, even in the years the chart is pointed the wrong way. So if there's one thing I want you to walk away with today, it's this: compounding was never actually slow. It just spends its early years quietly building something you can't see yet. The flat stretch that makes people want to quit is the exact same stretch that makes the later years possible. You're not wasting time in those years. You're spending it on the one thing that can't be bought back later, which is time itself sitting inside the market, working. If you're a few years in and it still feels like nothing's happening, I get why that's discouraging. But nothing happening is actually the wrong way to describe it. Something is happening. It's just happening at a scale too small to notice yet, the same way you can't watch a snowball's shape change minute to minute at the top of the hill. Give it room, give it time, and keep feeding it consistently, because the version of this that eventually looks dramatic on a chart was built entirely out of years that felt completely undramatic while you were living them. That's really the whole secret, if you can even call it a secret. There's no trick, no perfect fund, no timing strategy that gets you to the fast part any sooner than simply staying in long enough to reach it. The people who end up ahead usually aren't the ones who found something clever. They're the ones who didn't quit during the boring part. If this helped you see your own numbers a little differently, do me a favor and hit like. It genuinely helps this reach more people who need to hear it. Subscribe if you want more honest, no-hype breakdowns like this one. And I'd love to know in the comments, do you know roughly where your own crossover point is? Drop your timeline down there. I read every one of them. Thanks for spending this time with me, and I'll see you in the next one.